Hello and welcome, everyone. My name is Maylis. I use she, her pronouns, and I am a transformational coach and consultant. And for the last 10 years, I've worked at the intersection of mental health and creative industries, essentially supporting businesses and future leaders to make more of an impact through courageous conversations. I am also the program director at We Create Space, and we are so pleased to co-create today's Inclusion Challenge with Involve on mental health in the LGBTQ plus community. So a little bit more about We Create Space. We are a self-empowerment platform for LGBTQ plus professionals and allies, and our transformational learning and development experiences support all employees with becoming more impactful, more authentic version of themselves inside their own communities and organizations. A little clarity statement before we get going. You will hear me use along the way we and our, and that's me speaking into the experiences of many people within the community and also speaking myself as a bisexual member of the LGBTQ plus community. I'll also use we and our really in the context of relating to all of us, allies, leaders, anyone who has an interest in creating change within their organization. So setting the scene here, it's really important to mention that working alongside businesses, queer leaders, LGBTQ plus change makers, and allies from across the globe has helped reveal that for impact and authenticity to emerge, well, the change must start from within. And only when we understand who we are can we use our personal narrative as fuel to instigate positive change and personal growth. Well, that probably sounds like a tall order, right? That's perfectly normal. Because be it personal or professional development, I'm sure you can agree, is a journey. But for many LGBTQ plus people, this journey is marked by very unique internal and external challenges, at times very complex, and also some induced by their minority experience. So in today's session, we'll be exploring some of those challenges specifically as they relate to mental health in the LGBTQ plus community. And we'll cover the following points. The first one is understanding how LGBTQ plus mental health intersects with identity, how understanding intersectionality helps develop self-awareness and compassion needed to create safer spaces for LGBTQ plus people. And the third point, practical tips that I'll share with you for self-inquiry, safeguarding for your mental health, and knowing how to better support others as well. Okay. So where I thought we could start essentially is that mental health and well-being, especially for LGBTQ plus people, can be a difficult topic to broach. And this is often compounded in the workplace where poor mental health is one of the leading causes for lost days. So first off, can we just, agree on a definition there? What do we mean by mental health? And I'll share with you a definition that we often use. And here is what it says. Mental health is our relationship to and how we come to experience our thoughts, our feelings, our emotions, and behaviors. And this also differs from one person to the next. And in preparing for this session, we saw that pre-pandemic, 50% of LGBTQ plus people had experienced depression, and 3 in 5 had experienced anxiety. And there's a growing body of work that suggests that some and those also exposed to racism may be more likely to experience mental health problems. And this is not a surprise, because when we started to investigate LGBTQ plus mental health, it brought us back to reflect on foundational themes like identity. Identity, is often described as a construct, which means that it's made of different elements. And there's a quote that we'd like to share, and it's by A.H. Almaas, who's an American author and spiritual teacher. And he describes identity as patterns in the past that reemerge and become what define us. So you can agree that identity is essentially who we are. It's the way we think about ourselves. It's also the way we are viewed by the world and how we interpret the characteristics that define us. We've seen in our work that for many LGBTQ plus people, how we express our identity has long been defined in relations to our environment, to people, places, and things, and the roles we play and the different masks that we wear or have become accustomed to wearing in these settings. By that, I'm really talking about, if you think about the first point, people, well, it's about adversity, whether it's from family of origin or society. If any expression of who we are is disowned by our caregivers, to retain our connection with this group, well, a lot of people have unconsciously fallen in this pattern of pushing away aspects of themselves as a need to simply survive. If you think about places, well, that's about being yourself at work. How easy is that? In heteronormative spaces, how do we navigate those as opposed to queer spaces where it maybe feel more inclusive and comfortable? We've seen how being exposed to stigmatization, to homophobia, to transphobia means that expressing our identity can threaten our career safety or even our emotional, mental, and physical safety as well. Well, the last point is about things and ideas. And this goes to the representation of queer bodies, the portrayal of queer people's success, love, health, which for a lot of the years, whether in the media or in newspapers or magazines, will essentially have either projected negative stereotypes or projected unrealistic expectations. And at least one of these challenges has shaped the lived experience of queer people, because the minority experience in itself is anything but easy. And for queer people as well, who happen to navigate multiple intersecting and marginalized as well identities, well, they're also prone to additional challenges that can exacerbate poor mental health. So I'll talk about these a bit further. The first one is minority stress. For those of you who don't know, this refers to the additional stress that members of marginalized groups experience because of the prejudice and discrimination they face. The second point is about hypervigilance. Well, this speaks into when our safety is at risk. We move into protection mode. Well, if over time we continue to feel unsafe in a particular situation or environment, well, our brain constantly codes this type of interaction as a threat, which makes it quite hard to actually see past. The other point there is about needing to overcompensate, feeling like we need to do more than what's required, which often can lead to burnout, a very silent pandemic. Well, the last point essentially is imposter syndrome. And this plays out as this belief that, I'm not good enough, and this persistent inability to believe that one's success is well-deserved or legitimate. That's why, when we talk about understanding intersectionality, well, it's crucial to link that as we understand or aim to understand LGBTQ plus mental health. So defining intersectionality at this point, I think is quite important. For those of you who are not familiar, intersectionality was coined by Kimberly Crenshaw, and she is a leading lawyer and advocate in critical race theory. And what she says is that intersectionality is the interconnected nature of social categorizations such as race, class, sexuality, and gender as they apply to a given individual group, and is regarded as creating overlapping and interdependent systems of discrimination or disadvantage. Essentially, really what we're talking about here is adopting an intersectional approach to understanding LGBTQ plus mental health or providing further support means having to check in with our privilege and bias. And in no way does it mean that privilege, well, is about saying that you have had an easy life or that you've never had to struggle or work hard. It simply means that, well, there are certain challenges you will not have to experience or even think about just because of who you are. And so it's in noticing our differences that we notice the gaps. We become less inclined to make assumptions and we create space for compassion. And this allows us as queer leaders and allies as well to be more helpful and to better direct our energy for change. So however this resonates with you right now, I know it may sound like a lot, but I really invite you to reflect on your own journey, on your own story as a queer leader, as an ally. And the good news is, well, we are all learning. And you can choose to see today's challenge as an opportunity and space for self-discovery. And we've seen many queer leaders and allies start this process and in time totally reimagine how they relate or take care of themselves and show up for others. So what will you choose to commit to today? What will you choose to own moving forward? We know that beginning a self-inquiry journey isn't easy. And so before we wrap the session up, we wanted to share some key steps as to how you could get started. So the first one here is about knowing your story. Starts by checking in with yourself, whether that's journaling, meditating, breath work, well, essentially really creating space to discover more insights about yourself. This also helps understand further our triggers. The second point is about, well, starting a conversation, whether with close friends, families, chosen family, or even your community at work, people who can attest to your journey and offer constructive feedback or challenge any negative thoughts or behavior. The second point there is about sharing your story. We know in our work that storytelling has healing and transformational powers and helps support good mental health. So can you maybe think outside of the box? Maybe through songwriting or dance or poetry, using any other form to help you discover about yourself can be crucial in this journey to self-discovery. The other point there is about using your platform. Could it be social media or even at work? Reach out to your peers and see where there might be opportunities for you to show up and be of service and share your story. The last point there is about looking after yourself. We know how talking openly about your mental health is important. We also need to be mindful about our bodies. Using our physical energy really helps recharge our mental health and emotional energy as well. And the last point is about having grace. We know that we're going to make mistakes along the way, so please be kind to yourself. So that's it from us today. Make sure to check out the workbook and also the reflective practices. And we really hope that you get to join Involve tomorrow for another lesson on allyship.